Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, From the Depths of Darkness to the Light of Success. I am your host, Chris Swiech, and on this podcast, we talk about mental health, addictions, ADHD, and really anything anyone's afraid to talk about. We talk about it on the show. I believe everyone's story is valuable at the end of the day. Doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. You are all welcome on my platform. You can follow the show over on Instagram and check me out over there at Depths of Darkside. You can go hit subscribe and turn on your notifications over on YouTube, From the Depths of Darkness to the Light of Success. And you can find the show over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and really anywhere you listen to your show, you can find it there. With no further ado, I'd love to introduce you to my next guest. I got Hannah Sward, originally from Canada, but living out in LA now. Would love to introduce you guys to her. And you want to take it away and let them know a little bit about you, Hannah, and what you're all about?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Sward, and thank you, Chris, for having me on, particularly with the Canadian connection. It's familiar, comforting. I live in Los Angeles now, and I have a little over 13 years of sobriety. I'm very involved in the recovery community. I also sought outside help for my program, and the basis of my recovery is the 12-step program. That is the program that worked for me, along with the outside help. And in the course of these 13 years, I was living a life of hopeless desperation. And I never, ever thought it was possible to get sober. I never tried. The only times I tried were when my dealer went to jail. I thought I'm getting sober, and the anxiety and depression was so gripping that it was intolerable. So I treat, and my sobriety is a gift. And I take my recovery very seriously. And I also have a lot of fun in recovery. And I'm also the author of the newly published book, Strip, a memoir. I've been very fortunate to have gone on a successful book tour and support my story coming out into the world and hopefully connecting with others.
And your memoir, Strip, you just told us about there, has received praise for its honesty and raw portrayal of your journey into the sex industry. Can you share how the process writing this memoir helped you reflect on your experiences and find healing? And what message you hope readers will take away from your story?
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. The process was very long. I had been writing prior to this book and prior to getting sober. When I got sober, everything stopped. It was all I could do to get through the day sober, my head to the pillow sober. And my dream was to get back to writing. And at 2 years into sobriety, I began writing again every day for 2 pages a day, just handwriting, whatever came. I did not know I was writing a book. I ended up meeting a mentor through a series of events that she heard me reading in her class, and she said, "You're writing a memoir." And that was not my intention. That is what came out of me showing up to the page. And it's, again, has been a very long process. It took 5 years to write, and then another 5 years to get it published, with going through a couple different agents and the publishing houses. So 10 years, my process with it at times has been excruciating, especially writing the trauma with the sex work. I know that's not everybody's experience in the sex industry. That was mine. And going back into childhood, on the back cover, part of what it says is, let's read the first two sentences, but born in the most bohemian 70s, Hannah Sward was abandoned by her mother and lived with her poet father on an island with no cars or stores. Kidnapped and molested by a stranger at 6, she grew up to be a stripper and a prostitute with a taste for crystal meth. And it goes on, but I read that to give a little glimpse into my childhood, which, to write the book, there's so much to speak on that. I wouldn't even know where to start. It was right in line with my recovery, though. I couldn't have written it any sooner. I couldn't have tolerated the emotions that came up while I was writing it. And it unfolded in its own time. And what I want, or what I wish for readers to come away with is I dedicate the book to learning to sit in the hours. And that was my dream. I wanted to be a woman that loved herself, that could sit with herself and in turn sit with others and be present, because that's one of the greatest gifts. And if I can't do that for myself, I cannot do it for anyone else. I hope that this book gives hope, which I've heard that it does, to the readers, that recovery is possible, whatever one is recovering from, and that it's a continual process, and that it takes a community, that it's possible. The desperation, I hope my readers read that, and I don't want them to identify, because I hope that those are haven't those are not feelings they've experienced. But I think the kind of person that will be drawn to the book innately had some sort of area of their life, at a time in their life, maybe currently, where it's really hard.
No, most definitely. And it seems that you've been able to unravel this story of yours, and it probably opened up wounds that you had hoped to just push aside and not open up again. But it was probably good to help you through those feelings of emotion and the trauma that was thrown at you all over the many years that all this stuff had happened.
Right.
So what happened with your mother? You mentioned there that she abandoned you at a really young age, and she has never been a part of the picture since, it sounds, or
I She was in the book. I visit her every summer. I spend a month with her, and in that time, I form a very deep bond with my little sister. And the book unfolds, buil- building that connection with my mother, simultaneous to my adult years and becoming closer. And so, yes, she's definitely in my life today. It was not an easy book to write, in terms of fearing what she would think, that I would hurt her feelings. And I needed to share my story, share my truth.
and then, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that too. Doesn't It's not that it doesn't matter what you say about these people either, but you're also sharing your side of the story as well, which is a
Right.
good thing to do. So the title of your
Yeah.
memoir, like you say, is Strip, suggests a journey from one state to another, both literally and metaphorically. Could you elaborate on the symbolism of this journey and how it represents your transition from darkness to a more enlightened and empowered place in your life?
Well, that's a question, Chris. I really think of strip as stripping away all of the pretenses, all of the, for me, I'll speak only for myself, all the parts that blocked me from feeling a connection to you, to something greater, coming from a place of isolation, shame, self hatred, and that journey, and what that takes to really strip away to the core of that. And that is, as I think anyone would understand, a really difficult, painful process. And I don't know if everyone comes to the point where there's that window of grace to make a change. That window presented itself for me. I couldn't keep doing what I was doing anymore. I couldn't, this self hatred, I took actions that said and reaffirmed that self hatred, like the sex, where I did that in the beginning as desperation. I don't want to give too much of the book away, but I initially got into it to earn money for college. However, I'm clear that many people need money for college and they don't turn to sex work as a form of income. And and it was alluring. Moved to Los Angeles to be with my sister, and a big part of the book is our bond and reconnecting with my mother, and ultimately the connection to myself.
That's amazing, that you were able to, break it down and, break yourself down to the point that you, like you said before, stripped yourself back and just built from the ground up again,
Yeah.
which must have been very tough to do for yourself and or for anyone. I would imagine it would be tough. It's not easy. I can attest to that as well. Anyone can attest to that.
Yeah.
Going
And
through their own struggles, doesn't matter if it's addiction, mental health, eating disorders, or whatever the case may be, or like you were saying, self-hatred and stuff.
mhm,
What was it that drew you in the beginning to this line of work?
I believe I was predisposed to it. I really think the
So
kidnapping,
more groomed? Yeah.
in a sense, I mean, I don't know if it's across the board. I can't say, and I don't think anything's across the board, but I do think that the women and the men that I've met in that industry often come from challenges in childhood, sexual abuse. That kidnapping, I was 6 years old, a stranger took me away in a brown car. That affected me. That informed later choices. Yeah. And
Yeah, and that would affect anyone. I'm sure that would affect doesn't matter at what
and
age. That would be a very scary experience. I've never been in those shoes before, but I'm sure that would be very scary for anyone.
yeah. And I
So how
think
did
that
you get away from this kidnapper?
he, that, ag- again, I don't want to put too much, give too much away of the book, but I will say that if he told me that if I ever told anyone, he would kill me. I'm here today. I didn't die. I got away. And I internalized that experience as it was something wrong, something bad, that it was my fault. It wasn't, I think there's a lot more awareness about uh, those things, such as Amber Alert today. This took place in the 70s. I think it was a different time. The awareness wasn't what it is now. Thank God that it's grown. And then also the help afterwards. I remember getting in trouble for that experience. And that's what I mean by internalizing it as me doing something wrong. Trauma, it's a trauma, and having nowhere to process that, no safe place. And I grew up in it with my father and I loved him. And it was just I think part of it was just the time and that he was doing deep in his art with the 70s.
And that would getting in trouble for that would really make you think twice. What am I doing wrong? Or what did I do wrong in that sense? So that would strip you of many things. Now you're a burden to people. You're this, you're that. So that must have been very tough on you as well.
It really stuffed down my voice. It wasn't until I got sober that I really started to develop a voice. I don't mean literally, but I mean standing,
Standing up for yourself and
yeah, and feeling that I had a right to. And that's a continual process at 13 years in recovery. It's a continual process. And part of the book is that process, not part of it, all of it. And it continues on. Yeah. And I think opening the conversation itself is what's so important. I've had women reach out to me after reading it, and that's been the biggest, like, that fills my heart. That they can feel like they can talk with me and share. And if not me, hopefully someone else in their life that they feel safe with.
and I feel the same too after reading a former hockey player's book too, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I'm not alone." The molesting that I went through at 9 or 10 years old as well. but I bottled that up for, geez, until I got clean this time around almost 4 years ago.
Wow.
And it was the first time I very really talked about it. And but it's nice to see lots more people coming forward, and it's an abnormal thing. I wish it never happened to anyone really, but it does happen to so many people,
So many people.
like so many people that you and you know is holy cow, or you start talking to others that you know in your life too. Oh, this happened to me, or these things happened and stuff like that too. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it really is. And through sharing our stories, we get to whatever form that is in to realize we're not alone in it, or I'm not alone in it. We're not alone in it. Yeah. And again, there's that connection. It becomes a conversation. And through a conversation, I think there's healing.
There really is, and it's nice that you're able to have people. It's like it's cool to see how it comes full circle. Your story is now help this woman or this woman come forward and say, "Hey, I had a similar experience as well." Maybe not obviously not the exact same as yours, but they can really relate on the level that you were on for the things that you were doing or going through as well through this period of your life.
That's right.
In your book, you describe the emotional and spiritual survival that was necessary during your time we just talked about too as being an escort. How did you manage to preserve your sense of self and identity amidst such challenging circumstances? And what tools or strategies were most instrumental in your resilience to come back?
Community. I couldn't have done any of this alone. I lost faith over and over again. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe that everything was going to be okay. And I kept taking the next best indicated step. I put my hand in the people's who surrounded me. I went towards the love. When I was doing sex work and stripping, I didn't have any tools. And um and I wasn't savvy. And neither of those industries, it wasn't my experience of empowerment. I hear some people say that it's empowering. For me, it was not. It's interesting that's different for everyone. Like I was stripping with my sister and she did not experience it like I did. She didn't internalize it as this desperate. For me, it was. And to come out of that, I came in and out of it a few times. The first time I entered that, I was 19. Then I moved to Los Angeles, 24. And the next time I was 37. So it wasn't continuous, but it was something I came back to. And it's been a really long road away from that and taking actions, doing everything differently, regardless of the fear, and having a whole community being there for me and me being there for my community, because that's in itself the building of self esteem, right? Getting to be there for other people who are struggling. And an all encompassing experience. And the possibilities are huge. Anything's possible then, right? If we're talking about addiction specifically in this, uh, anything is possible when one is sober. Nothing was possible when I wasn't sober. There was no possibilities.
I totally agree with you there. All bets were off if there was any form of substance going into my body. And that goes for most other addicts as well. Like I could barely. I remember having a conversation with my boss recently, and I just said, like, you would know if I was using because I probably would be a gradual slope, and it would, and by the, I would just stop showing up to work.
Right.
Trust me, I probably wouldn't have a job in the next month or two. It would be gradual, but it would just be full force. This is like the longest I've held a job down in a long time, and and
Congratulations on 4 years. Such a big
thank you.
deal. Yeah.
And but I remember, and it's just It's crazy to think that these substances can take over your mind and just alter your moods
Mm,
to the point that you're stealing from your loved ones or you're doing things that you would have never thought you would have done, those types of things. And I did it all. And do I feel shame, guilt, and remorse? Oh, yes, I do, because
mm,
those are the people that loved me the most. And those are the people that you usually hurt the most when you're a road to destruction because they're the ones that are closest to you. And it's sad to just look back and see this is the destruction I caused, basically, or the train wreck I caused. And then if you don't also work on yourself, I've talked to others too, that just getting clean is one thing. That's like the least, that's a few percent of it. That's not the most of it. And that comes when you have to start doing the work and feeling those feelings and those types of things
right.
too.
Yeah,
That's where the
because
real work begins.
yeah. Yeah. My whole addiction was running away from. So exactly, like, how do you stay sober and feel those feelings that I ran away from for a decade? Yeah. It does take a lot of work and doing everything different.
Changing friends, just make your circle tight now. That's all I like to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not try to, I still have to work on that too, is the people pleasing or,
Oh,
oh, we
yeah.
always got to go out with those, go out and do something. No, we can just sit back and relax though too, but that goes hand in hand with my mental illness and everything too. I always got to be doing something. I always got to,
Mm,
or I can't just sit at home. We're not doing anything. We're not doing anything fun.
right. Yeah. Yeah. It takes so many forms, and it's like, what's the balance? And um, yeah.
So your writing style, Hannah, has been described as stark and shameless, drawing readers into your experiences with vivid descriptions. I've heard some great vivid descriptions here.
Mhm.
How did you find the courage to write so openly about these taboo and intimate aspects of your life? And what impact do you hope your writing will have on others who may be facing similar challenges? We've talked about that already, but
Mhm. well, one, I think being in a 12-step program, I was used to sharing my story, used to sharing honestly, authentically, sharing in a safe space with a safe group of people, things that I never wanted to share with anyone, particularly if I was one on one with someone and sharing those things. So I think that practice in itself and that vulnerability, that level of honesty. And then there was a publication called The Six, Addiction and Recovery magazine. And I began writing for them. And so it was like it was like I was practicing, like, what's this? I remember the first piece I wrote was called Sugar Daddies in and Out of Sobriety. And writing that and then presenting it on a public level without changing my name, I think that prepared me for it. I've always been a believer with writing that if I'm not going to write the truth and write what happened, then what's the point? Especially with writing memoir. I'm not going to not, I'm not going to not go there. I don't know if that's also growing up with my father, who was a writer. So it's just like this innate part of me with writing and with my writing style. It has been certainly referred to as dark. And there's 75 short chapters. I wrote it like that because I like that to capture clips. And for myself, sitting for long periods of time without like pages and pages of text, I find that very overwhelming, especially when I first got sober to sit down and read. So many of my chapters end up being this is a whole chapter for one of them. And in that, you got to capture and you got to get to it, and you got to get to it fast, right? Like I have a chapter on my drug dealer boyfriend. In such a short amount of time, there's no on ramp. So that lends itself to that stark style. Yeah. And I like writing that way.
Hey, everyone has their style of doing things. There's like
Mhm.
photographers or people that do video or salespeople. We all have our own style. You
Right.
can pull from everyone's style and make it your own as well. Now, did you
Right.
find that writing this book, coming out with your truth, did it help you become more authentic towards others and show your true authentic self in its purest form, writing this book?
I think so. What stands out most is that it was an integrated process. So it wasn't I was already sharing my story before the book came out, right? Through essays that I was publishing, through doing panels and talks and so forth. I think it gave me a level of being able to stand more in in myself, uh, with bringing out into the world the process itself of promoting. And my inclination is to get small and be like, oh, here it is. But with this, it's about you got to self promote, and that's not my strength. But if I wasn't going to do it, no one else was going to do it. And it continues to be that. And I have a publicist, and she, is there. But ultimately, it's the groundwork that I think every author ends up doing themselves, or no matter how big the publishing house. So that in itself and reaching out, asking for help, all of that has stripped away more to my authenticity, as uncomfortable as it is, right? Because my defects will come up of, I don't want to call that person for help, or I don't know how to do this. Like Instagram, wasn't even on Instagram 3 months before the book came out. And learning these things and having some humility to learn them and be fumbling and to continue to fumble. And I think that's authentic in itself, right?
Yeah, and putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations or doing those things that are uncomfortable to you, the things that you may not know how to do. But then
Right.
that's where the growth comes, that you find yourself doing these things that are uncomfortable. Hey, maybe I can do this after
Mhm.
doing it a few times. Sure, may it look messy the first couple times? Most likely, but there's nothing wrong with that though. It's the failures, the uncomfortability, being uncomfortable, and those types of things is what makes you a better person.
Yeah. And I will say too, it was particularly challenging at the time that the book came out. My greatest fear was my father passing. That was my greatest fear my whole life. And my dream was to have a book come out. And they both happened last year. And I look at that as divine timing. And within that, it also had its challenges. Being there by my dad's side with having a book come out in 3 months, it was like, how do you show up for both of these things? And yeah, I don't think, formative year of my life.
That's amazing when you're able to share that moment, whatever that may be for you, with your father as well, him being a writer as well. Reading some of your social media posts, it sounds like you guys had a very tight bond though. He would take you on these excursions when he and when you were a young child and stuff too, and those are some fond memories of yours probably.
Absolutely, Chris. Yeah. Yeah. And had I not been sober, had I not had a community to lean on, I would have missed it all. I wouldn't have been there by my dad's side. And been the greatest gift of my life to be able to hold his hand to the last breath, to be there and have no regrets on how I was able to show up for that. But it was people that showed me how to do that. I didn't learn that on my own. I saw people show up for that in their lives. And I also knew who to go to when that time came, because I had witnessed them. And the same with the book and writing the book. Yeah. What made you get sober this time? I don't mean I don't wanna put you on the spot, but
No,
it's just so incredible to have 4 years and it's just sometimes it just, sometimes it's I remember that certain third day sober so vividly. And I'm grateful for that because I never want to go back. But I'm curious, yeah, with you, what was,
I was basically on the verge of losing everything. It was either at that point, my wife was away on a work trip, and I basically took the week off work. And took the week, didn't take the week off like as in holidays. I just never went to work and stole from her, my own wife, or well, at the time, girlfriend or whatever, all those types of things. And basically, I just reached out for help on the Sunday evening, and I was like to my brother, my youngest brother, I was like, "You man, you need to get me some help. I need to get help." Like I reached out at that point. It was time to just get some help at that point, and it was a struggle. I won't lie, between getting on some antipsychotics and coming off those. Those are probably even worse than coming off what I was coming off of.
right,
It was just a nightmare in itself. And if it wasn't for my wife, I really wouldn't be here. She, pushes me out of my comfort zone. She, calls me on my bullshit a lot. And
yeah,
I'm super grateful for her as well, and how she's been here for me. And I've caused, a lot of the demise, the traumas that she's, going through as well, that have been caused by me as well. But it's nice that I get to experience these things clean and sober now, and try to be more present in my kids' lives, because I was there, but I wasn't. And it's,
yeah.
nice to see the milestones and
Oh,
those types
yeah,
of things, and, be there, or try to be there for your family and friends, have a great career now, and those, just growing our own unit.
yeah, yeah. It's extraordinary,
It Sorry?
extraordinary.
It really is, yeah, it's a beautiful world out there, but it can also be an evil one as well.
Yeah. When I think of the title, the part of the depths of darkness, wow, we go low. Or I know I did really low incomprehension, right? Um,
Yeah, it's pretty wild what you'll do for a fix, or those types of things. And
what was your drug of choice? Not choice. There's not a choice at a certain point.
no, I was crack cocaine and meth as well. Meth at the end because it was cheaper. But it went from starting with cocaine to, I remember someone introduced me to that. I was at a bar one night, and this guy's, "Oh, let's go for a drive," and introduced me
Yeah.
to it, and just took off from there. That was, close to 20 years before that. So
Yeah.
it's taken me on some different, going to a treatment center, trying to get into another one here. This time I had to do it on my own this time, because the healthcare system up here is useless. I'll say
Mm,
that much. It's like they do, and they don't care about you and your mental health and everything. It's sad to see how far gone the system as is.
yeah.
I have friends who are mental health nurses. But the system is so far gone. You're fending for yourself. Like, instead of sending these guys back out on the street or to jail, get them the help they need. That's why they're doing. I don't blame some of these people that are living on the streets. I volunteered and stuff, and talked to them. They're like, "Chris, I have to go steal, because they don't have a place for me to go. They can't. There's no housing. There's no nothing. I gotta survive somehow." I don't blame them though.
Yeah.
If they have to eat, so they're gonna go steal food. That's what they got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then they just go back. It's just a cycle. And they're
Yeah.
out the next day or a couple days later, but they're gonna do the same thing.
Yeah.
Or it's there's a huge treatment center in Guelph here, but it's if you don't have money, it seems these days, you're not getting into anything. Like, any of the government run things are so backlogged, or they won't allow you into the treatment center they wouldn't allow me to go into, they're like, "No, you have to go cold turkey basically off the
Oh,
drugs, the narcotic that I was on."
that could be so dangerous.
And for my mental illness, they're like, "No, that's considered a narcotic, a controlled substance, so we can't have you on that." So it's just like six of one, half dozen of the other. Or you don't live in this city. You can't come to this treatment center. We're going to save a bed. We're going to give a bed to someone that lives in this area. It's
There's
like,
so many obstacles.
oh yeah, but I hope to see it coming around, but it's going to take a lot of years. But that's with people sharing their stories or sharing what they're going through. That's what's going to help push this forward because we've made waves and small waves, but it's going to take people like you and I or many others sharing their stories to make these waves.
Yeah, and it affects all walks of life. I mean, we just can't tell looking at someone what their story is, where they come from.
No, it's so true. You have people, oh, I only thought those people on the streets did that type of drug. No, you don't. There's so many people that are high functioning, whatever you want to call it, that there's all walks of life.
Right.
It doesn't discriminate anyone either, race, color, what
Yeah.
they do for their job. It's anyone can go down that path.
Yeah.
Everyone comes from generational trauma as well, I believe.
Yeah.
And
That's so true.
it goes back further. And but I wish it was different for me growing up because I was always like, it's like just don't talk about it. Let's just sweep this under the rug. And then that's ingrained
Right.
in me. And then that's what I want to do as well. And I'm trying to rework that area of my life to not do that anymore. To
Right.
have those uncomfortable conversations, or try to at least, and those types of things.
Yeah.
Melissa Broder mentioned that your memoir is visceral as hell. Could you discuss the emotional journey of revisiting and sharing your past and how the process of writing and publishing Strip has affected your perspective on life and your own personal growth today?
The writing of it I think the hardest part, one of the hardest parts was going back into the scenes and fleshing them out. I had a whole exercise that I did, uh, so as not to be, not just not in order to not just check out, but actually disassociate. Because that was a really big, uh, that's a big thing when you go through trauma, the disassociation, in order to survive it, as I understand it. And so going back into those scenes and having a grounding exercise before, taking pauses during writing the scene, and then a grounding exercise after. It was all very intentional. Not the first draft, but when I came back in over later drafts to flesh it out. As an example, when I'm writing about the first time that I was a call girl, m- many of the scenes it was like, and then we had sex. And my agent at the time was like, "Eh, we need a little more than that." And I was like, oh. And so to go back in there and flesh it out, I came back to that a few years into it. And again, I had that exercise to do, and I had the tools, and also I had built up the tolerance in order to, I was able to tolerate more and more of the things that came up. That's why I say I couldn't have written it any faster. At any other time, I couldn't tolerate, right? And it still felt intolerable in those times of going back into the scenes. But again, I had the tools such as the grounding exercise. And that was with the help of outside work. And yeah. And then what was the one of I missed the other blame thing.
Oh, how has it like affected your perspective on life and your own personal growth? That was it.
Yeah.
But what kind of grounding exercises were you given or were you doing to, flush this information out to create these chapters in the book?
Getting in my body, which when I began therapy, and I remember my therapist saying, "Where are you?" Oh my God, I wanted to walk out of the room. I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'm right here." She's, "No, you're not." I didn't even understand on an intellectual level, let alone physical, that I was disassociated. I just couldn't feel what she was talking about. And that took many years of work. with the grounding exercise was the exercise of getting into my body, like actually having, like rubbing my feet on the floor, putting the palms of my hands on my thighs, doing some breath work and really orienting myself in place and time in the room. And that all may sound, well, I don't know what that sounds. Yeah, it may sound different to everyone. Uh, that is what worked for me. And, and and it's in, it's, it's beyond the book, right? Because now I have these tools as I go through life. When something is activated, like if when I'm in an intimate relationship, I have more of an awareness when it is that I check out, or when I'm somewhere else and I'm gone, even though I'm there. Especially with so many years of crystal meth and drinking, I was checked out. It's a totally different thing to live in real time. Like a day sober is a really different than a day on crystal meth. 5 minutes feels really different. So it's a whole developmental process. And writing the book, was an extraordinary experience, very challenging. So many things came up: compare and despair, lack of faith that it was ever going to happen, that it wasn't happening like it was for other people, that when I thought it was close to coming out, the agent stepped down, like all of these things. And I'm talking beyond the book, like for anyone in their own lives, right? When we have these dreams or aspirations or on a day to day basis, things unfold not according to my plan, right? But if you believe in a higher power, that's what I choose to rely on. And if I'm relying on something greater than myself and trusting that and building the evidence that I'm taken care of, right? If any of that makes sense. So, in that building the evidence, once I start to lose it in myself and in my dreams coming true, because it's not happening in the way I think or where I'm seeing it or in my time, I look to the women that I get to work with and see their lives unfolding. So, when I lose faith in my journey, I see it happening for them and I have a perspective, right? 'Cause I'm not in it the way they are. And I have faith in their journey. So I can't separate the book from any part of my life.
Well, the whole book was your life
Mhm.
up until that point as well. You're
Right.
just you're putting it out there, like you said, and just being your true authentic self. And
Yeah.
that's the best thing you could do, just to share your truth, share your story. Like, this is where Hana was all these years for maybe my friends that didn't know where I went or
Yeah.
whatever. It's out there now, and
Yeah.
nothing, there's probably feelings of anxiety and just getting those cold feet, getting this all done. But I bet you it's an amazing feeling now, though, for you.
Yeah. It is. It is. And it's really interesting to have childhood friends that I haven't been in contact since I was maybe 12 years old read it and reach out to me on social media. And it's all there. Right. And yeah, it is definitely vulnerable, feel naked. And the hardest person was with my mom. Yeah. By far, way more than strangers or anybody else, my mother.
Now, did you ask for permission from her, or did you
No,
just go ahead? You're like, did you say, "Hey, mom, I am writing this"? I don't know if your mom's passed or alive still,
she's
but
alive. Yeah.
and you just, this is happening thing, or did you say, "Here, read the book," or how
Oh,
did that
no,
go?
no, no. It was happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't ask anybody. Yeah. I would, book wouldn't have been written if people.
No,
At
most
least.
definitely. You're able to share your truth, and if
Yeah.
someone doesn't agree with it, that's okay.
And
There's
my
nothing
mom
wrong
knew
with
I
that.
was writing it, right? And I talked to her as it was unfolding. Um, and had supported my writing all along when I was publishing prior to this. And so she was really excited for the book. And I had a very honest conversation with her before it came out. I said, Mom, I'm really worried about you reading this book. My intention was not to hurt your feelings. And because there's a lot in there about her and her men and all of this stuff. But the part that I was most weary of was my feelings as a child when she left. And, and she was like, you can write it all. It would take 2 books to write about all my men. So she was pretty open about it all. Very different when it came back to reading it.
And I'm sure maybe it brought you even closer after her reading this book though too. Who knows?
It was very hard, very hard. We're in a place now where I ended up talking to her after so many months of it being out and just saying, Mom, I'm done talking about it. I want to move forward. The open conversations, there was so many layers to it. And
Sure.
and you're right, though. Maybe in some unspoken way closer, I feel more authentic. I'm sharing with her what I never wanted to share. Those feelings
And
as a
there's nothing
child.
wrong with that to share from your heart, shoot
Yeah.
from the sleeve sort of thing too, and shoot from the heart. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that at all. So I'm proud of you for going out and doing that's amazing.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Yeah. My next book will,
Well,
yeah.
I appreciate you coming on the show today as well, Hannah. But before we do take off here, where can everyone go buy this book? Where can they find you if they want to reach out to you on social media?
Let's see.
And
Well,
I'll be
here,
sure to drop this all in the comments as well in the notes.
thank you, Chris. And again, thank you so much for having me on and for what you do with your show and bringing this message, all of our different journeys and providing this space. And you, yeah, the hosting comes natural to you with the listening and asking questions. And I think it is a gift. So thank you. And people can buy it on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, Goodreads. Many bookstores have it. And on social media, it's my name, Hannah Sward, and then author on Instagram and on Facebook. And I also have my website, hannahsward.com. And it has events that I'm doing and uh, things that I've done for TV, like California Live National Recovery features and things like that. So little bits and pieces of my journey with the book out in the world, which has been, yeah, amazing. I've been very fortunate, such as coming on here today.
Thank you again for coming on. I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do that as well. And we had a little blip in the road last week, and that's
We did.
okay. Hey, we make things happen.
And I want the listeners to know he was so patient. My whole computer shut down and I was like flustered and can you hear? And he's like, I can only see your chin. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like my dad with like only the ear. I'm like, Dad, I can only see your ear. And I'm like, so you know what? We can reschedule. Is that I'm like, yes. So anyway, thank you for your patience.
No worries. Again, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day today as well.
You too, Chris. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.